There was a point where I was really down and I was so close to giving up on life. But after that moment, I was like, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to be anyone to anyone. I don't have to achieve anything. All I am doing is living this moment. And then if I'm lucky enough, I'll live the next moment and maybe the next. How I got better, I think once you start following the law of nature, which is live in the present moment and be in the present moment, life takes care of itself. I think inner child work is quite powerful, and being able to reparent yourself is very liberating and very transformational.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the YouTube channel and to the podcast. Today, I've got a very special guest for you called Lahari. And I met Lahari a year ago, almost a year ago, I think by now, when she was having CFS as well. And right now, she's willing to share her recovery story with everyone. Well, everyone who is watching. And when I met you, it was not like you were at rock bottom because you already had quite a few healing parameters installed. So how did your life look like? I think it was April last year.
Yeah, too. I think when we first met, I was not at the rock bottom, but the couple of months just before we met, there was a period of 5 to 6 weeks where I was completely housebound and pretty much bedbound for a good part of the day, like 20 hours of day. I was just completely lying down in bed. So I think I just came out of that really rock bottom phase just when I met you. So things just started improving because of many healing parameters, as you say, that were already in place. But that was not the first time I was aware of having CFS. I think about 9 to 10 months before we met, that's when I was really floored by the symptoms. When I say floored, I just couldn't do anything, couldn't get up, It took me once 3 hours to make a cup of tea, just to get even to hold a mug or put the kettle on or fill the water, because there was no energy, no stamina in my body. So that was about 9-10 months before we met, and then from there I tried to help myself a little bit, and then I got better. Maybe the placebo effect, I don't know. Then I thought, okay, this is gone, I'm better, and then I went out, did things too quickly, too much, and then I was at the rock bottom. In CFS terms, people call it having a crash, and that crash was pretty hard than the first time around. And then when I started slowly coming out of that, that's when we met. So yeah, at the time, although I was not completely in a dark room, closing all my blinds, having sunglasses on, which I was just before meeting you, but I was just out of that, if that makes sense.
And because we talked about the healing parameters at that time, what were the things that made you feel a little bit better in that period?
I think the big switch, there are quite a few different things, but the big switch was I stopped fighting. Up until that point, the first 9-10 months of being faced with this new illness, at the time, that's how I saw it, like, oh God, what's happening to my body, or what's going on? And I just wanted to get better. I just wanted to go and live my life as I was living before, and to go do all the things like I was doing crazy amount of things for a normal human being. I just wanted to get back to that, and that strong push of I just want to go back. I just want to go back when my whole life wasn't working and that wasn't healthy. There was a switch that happened that I was like, I'll just stop trying. I just don't want to do anything. I don't want to fight. I don't want to get up. I don't want to do it. I'm just gonna just sit and lie down wherever I was, and just see what's happening with my body, or just observe. And through that, I was more in touch with what's happening inside in terms of my inner world, nervous system, and how I was responding to whatever is going on. So I was more in touch with my body, my emotions, and I was very slow in doing things, and just that being slow and being in nature, and yeah, just listening to my body. That those were the kind of things I think from memory that I was doing when we met originally.
You said to me at the time that your symptoms started during a period of safety. What happened exactly, and why do you think that you developed symptoms?
I know I had severe CFS symptoms in July 2021. So that's when I was first just, I couldn't do anything. I completely went into crash. But I believe the 3 to 4 years before that, the fatigue and the other symptoms that are normally associated with ME/CFS, I was experiencing them, but I didn't know that was ME/CFS. But looking back, what happened now from where we are in 2023, so the past 5-6 years, if I say, I started paying more attention to what's happening in my inner world, not just in my external world of what's going on with my job or life or physical health, etc. But I was paying more attention to my mental health, my emotional health, and what's happening, and how I was feeling, and I was learning about my sensitive side, and it was only baby steps, but there was a different side to life that I was getting interested in and curious about, and started to pay attention. And throughout that time, there were a lot of big changes in life, personally and professionally, and lots of things were going on. But all these new awareness and new knowledge that I was having, they were only surface level. Yes, I was paying attention to them, but my underlying behaviors were still there. So I was trying to get through life as it was, as if the new information that I realized doesn't make a difference. But sometimes I'm trying, sometimes I don't know. So it was all a little bit of confusing time. And yes, I was feeling safe at times, but sometimes I'd feel totally out of control, totally unsafe in every small situation. And then I got myself to a very safe place in terms of where I was living and things around me, where I really had time to slow down and felt safe. And even when there was no external threats or factors, even on a just normal day and a beautiful sunny day and a spring day, I just get up and I'd have this total inner storm of lots of fatigue or pain, anxiety, and lots of different things going on. And it just made me curious, what's going on, what's happening. So this is the period, I'd say 6 months before I was really completely floored down with the CFS. So I think what happened that 6 months before, looking back for me, was I was allowing things to come to the surface. See, if you put everything in a big bottle and then put the lid on, and the pressure was getting too much inside, and I was slowly loosening the lid of the jar up, and then I started opening that up, and there quite a few bereavements happened in the family. We've lost quite a few family members as well, so that was another factor that just pushed me over the edge. And then when that lid came off, all this suppressed pressure and whatever was inside, it just came out and took over in the form of ME/CFS symptoms.
Yeah, and it can be pretty overwhelming. And that is for almost everyone the case. Like, I ask you specifically this question because for almost everyone there is a small period of relative safety, and then you're like, I can relax. For the first time in my life, I get out of survival mode. I have arrived. Things are going better now. And then the old stress is, no, we want to come up as well. And
yeah, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, yes. And I was going to say that the brain is like, oh my God, it's panicking. What is this? Create symptoms. And then a downward spiral is going to happen almost with everyone. And before we know it, we're bedbound.
Yeah, I think I just want to say it for anyone listening is I can say by looking back at my own journey, but it it's ought to get worse before you start making real progress, because whatever you bottled up, whatever you've suppressed or you were unaware of that you were holding inside your system mentally, emotionally, physiologically, if that was suppressed all the time and you suddenly started doing something that feels safe and then you're letting it come up, they're not all going to go away in one wash. When they start when they start coming to the surface, those effects are physiological and they start affecting, and that in your brain starts fighting back because its habit patterns are so ingrained and so deep. So I see a lot of messages in our group and in Facebook and lots of other places as well, where people get really disheartened and disappointed. Oh, why am I here again? I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to do. I'm having symptoms again, and I've gone back. It feels like I'm never going to win. But that's the nature of how the healing happens, at least in my experience. Is you start opening the door for whatever needs to come out, and then they don't all come out in one go because the channel is only small and there's a bottleneck, so they start coming out slowly. And it's the more you're aware of, okay, there's more for me to let go of, there's more for me to let go of, that's how you start gaining your freedom back over life, or feel lighter as things leave you. And yeah, so I think for anyone that's watching in a really dark place, a really difficult time, it's something else that you need to observe and let go and practice all the safety things, and yeah, follow the program as a great resource there. So
Thank you. Yeah, sometimes, I mean, even at myself, when I look at myself, there can be thousands of layers. And then I'm good. And maybe I wake up, I have a headache, and I'm like, oh, there is something going on here. Do the release work. And then 20 minutes later, I'm good again. So I'm like, oh, I have some sort of control back, although, it comes whenever I'm not expecting it. But
yeah,
you told me that a very big part of your healing journey was the awareness of coping mechanisms.
but
What kind of coping mechanisms did you have, and how did it influence you? And also, how did you turn it around?
yeah, that was a really big part. And as you know, I've even written a blog about it, which is on your program website now. So I want to take a step back from even before coping mechanisms, but because before I even realized how my life was being run by these coping behaviors slash mechanisms, I sometimes refer to this as a giant mud in my brain, in my inner experience. So you don't know what's going on, what's coming from where, what's happening. And then when I started to slow things down and really pay attention to my body and feeling emotions rather than thinking about them, and really see how they come up, I started observing out of nowhere, my body and mind reaches out to some form of comfort or some form of activity that tries to move me away from what I wanted to do, which was to connect with the body, to feel what I was feeling. And that to get to that stage, it took a lot of very intense meditative state, and I was constantly meditating and doing a lot of journal speak at the time to process my emotions and just let things flow. And by doing a number of these things, when I finally arrived, and I think I may have shared this with you in one of our sessions before, where I just wanted to go for a walk one day because that's what I wanted to do, just to gently walk in nature next to a river, be safe for my brain and system. But as soon as I got out of the house, uh, before I even realized what was happening, I put my keys in the car And I was like, hang on a minute, why am I in the car? Because I was like, oh, let's go for a drive. No. I wanted to walk. I didn't want to drive. So where is this action that I didn't even where is this autopilot action that's coming from that I didn't even realize? And that's because when I wanted to go for a walk, I wanted to be with my emotions and be completely present in the moment. But my brain was perceiving that as a threat, as a danger. So it automatically switched into, oh, let's go for a drive. So you don't do what you wanted to do. And there were a number of these things that I was just starting to pay attention when I just wanted to sit and observe what's happening in my body. I suddenly have this urge to go make a cup of tea or go eat something or go for a chat with somebody or go do something else instead of being there in that moment and be present. That's when it just switched something in my brain. Hang on a minute. There is something that inside of me that's trying to get me away from the present moment because it's perceiving that present moment as something that's not wanted. And that's when I think we mentioned and talked about coping mechanisms, and I really put my foot down on coping mechanisms and really, okay, well, but let's see what you've got, brain, in terms of coping mechanisms. And it was crazy at times where I'd want to go on a walk and pay attention and have a chat with my own inner child, inner dialogue. And at times my brain would just go off on a tangent or go do something else, or mentally it comes up with crazy ideas or whatever. And as soon as I realized that, I was like, okay, we've gone off too far. And then I sit down, find a bench in a park, and sit down and bring myself to the present moment. And sometimes it would take me like 5 benches before I could bring myself back to the present moment. So you can imagine how much strength this automatic habit pattern had in terms of controlling my coping mechanisms. It sometimes it took me an hour, like going from bench to bench and realizing, okay, I'm still, my brain is still trying to run away. Come back. It's okay. Safe. Come back. Let's be back at the present moment. And that was a real eye opener in my healing process, to how my mind was working against me, working against my physiology, and but not in alignment or not together, but I guess it was trying to protect me, but from a danger that doesn't exist in the current reality, from a danger that probably existed in the past, in my old self. So trying to break that down and understand how that is showing up in real life and how that is showing up in the here and now, and overcoming that was a big step change in my recovery. And once I realized that, it was not, no, overnight I got completely better and I've never had any symptoms ever. No, that's not the case. But what I had was the understanding and the realization of how my coping mechanisms were being detrimental to my own progress, and how I can be aware of them and disengage, so I have more uh, control in a positive way. Not control as being in control of everything, more control of my own journey and my own healing progress. So um, yeah, I really feel passionately about everyone realizing how they are coping with their lives and why coping is not what we should strive for. Coping is, as in its name says, it's coping. It's not thriving. It's not being. It's you're just trying to cope, which in itself can be quite harmful if it's done day in and day out. Not on if it's not done in a special circumstance just to get you over the hurdles. But if you're constantly coping, that's the underlying problem. At least as a first step, I'd urge everyone to examine and look at how am I coping in my day-to-day life, which of it is coping, which of my behaviors are actually enjoying and joyful.
Yeah.
So
Wow, yeah, beautifully said. So at one point I realized that I was coping like 99% of my time in my own journey, or maybe 100 even. And all that coping was in the end was to get my attention somewhere else. So it was a distraction. But as soon as I then, completed this amazing task or whatever my ego wanted, feeling amazing, achieving some stuff, or being a good comedian when I used to be, I was still where I used to start, like feeling not good and don't want to engage with my own feelings. But it's also pretty difficult, to look into this stuff, because not everybody would like to be that honest with themselves.
Oh God, yes. Yes, I think the point that got me to realizing coping mechanisms and the effect of that on my health and well-being, the many steps before that, the one thing that led to it is being brutally honest with myself. You don't have to be honest with everyone else if you don't want to. That's secondary. But if you're not honest with yourself, if you're not really looking at yourself and saying, this is how I feel, or I want this, or I don't want, and then that's where things can start going really wrong and really downhill. So I really had to take stock and look at what's happening both internally and externally in my life. And I was doing many things. I had quite a big responsibility in my job, and I was hiking very regularly. I'd go quite lengthy distances, quite high mountains and hills. I was growing an allotment vegetables with a friend. I'd go running. I'd host dinner parties for friends. I'd go out and socialize quite in quite a few different things. I had quite a very active community life and very social life, whereas inside sometimes I couldn't even bring myself to get out of the door. But I was like, no, I have to be running. I have to go do this many kilometers of running, or this many miles of walking, or I have to go dig this plot of land up to grow vegetables. That was all coming from a place of pressure, internal pressure, subconscious pressure. Sometimes not, I didn't even realize. I feel guilty of not doing these things, not being this active citizen, or a good friend that socializes with everybody, or this high achiever at work, or this good family member for all my family, like my parents and sister and grandparents, etc. And all of that subconscious pressure, it was almost like a mountain of pressure. And when I looked at it really honestly and observed, like, do I really want to do all of these things? Am I really enjoying them, or am I doing it out of a place of pressure, or a place of needing to be a certain way because society dictates so? That radical honesty with self, that's what started helping me to realize quite a few things. And I was really brutally honest with myself in journal speak, and that's when things started flowing. And that's what got me to realizing my coping mechanism, that I was using this high achievement or high adrenaline through physical activities, or constantly socializing, or being there for other people before even looking after myself. And all of these were coping mechanisms, every part of my life, looking at it. And some of it was intertwined with things that I really enjoy. Like I enjoy cooking, I enjoy painting, I enjoy walking, I enjoy growing vegetables and different things. But it was not coming from a place of joy most of the time. It was coming from a place of pressure, and that I need to do this to be worthy of living a life on this planet, or whatever. So that honesty, authenticity, I think the word is overused these days a lot, but it's really important to consider it. And that authenticity with yourself is really, really important if you want to heal and get better.
Yeah. Oh, wow. You said many good things. I'm sure many people recognize a lot of it, and that it's really helpful. And looking back to our coaching sessions, I think you booked 3, but we only had 2. And we were speaking about some of the things, I think, in the first session, and then I had an idea like what's underneath, and I planned like in my head maybe we could do 2 more sessions. One to go to the underlying fear that could be
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
and the other one we never even did. So can you tell me a little bit what happened when we dived into the fear?
I think, I mean, if I remember it correctly, we had the first session where it was more like, let's get to know, and I was going through what's happening in my situation and where I was, and you reflected back, which is quite useful. And the second session, and I think you've said to me, yeah, let's dive into this fear. And I was like, yes, let's dive into that fear, because it's something that I don't think I have actively looked into before. But I remember even in the second session, I don't think we've gone fully to the bottom of my fear. We talked about it and looked at how it is. But what happened during that time and after is I really started to let my fear come through. And up until that point, I mean, even if I was afraid inside, I would never portray the behavior. Sometimes not even consciously. It's ever since I was a little child, I was always this symbol of being brave in the family that I grew up in the society that I was in. See, I always had this brave outlook for whatever brave meant at the time. I don't identify as that anymore, but it's not showing emotions and not feeling fear. That was the old definition of being brave. And that I had that persona of being brave without even consciously choosing to be brave, if that makes sense. But once I started looking at fear, and once we touched upon it, I was like, okay, there's something here. I think this might be the real key for me to looking at what's going on. I started letting the fear come up, and there were a few times where I was exploring it through my journal speak, and for sometimes couple of days I would be in real trembling, real shivering situation, because I was letting my old fears come to the surface so they can be released. And over the next few weeks, not even like a lot of weeks, I think within a couple of weeks after we had our second chat, I was out volunteering for a couple of weeks on a very remote farm in Wales, and there was another friend with me. And after a week or so, she said to me, like, why are you so afraid all the time? And that was the first time in my life I've ever heard someone say to me that I was afraid. That was it. For anyone else, that might be non-trivial, but for me, that was such a big thing, because I was not holding my fear inside. I was not behaving in an automatic habit pattern of my brain trying to suppress emotions. I was letting my emotions flow through. If I was afraid, that's just coming up. So that was a big success for me in my journey to realize, oh wow, yes, I think I'm on the right path. It sounds silly sometimes if you're not in the MECFS community, that you need to feel your fear. But yeah, being afraid was the best thing I could have done to heal. It's I was like, yeah, I am afraid. I am afraid what's going to happen, and not in a sense of being decapitated by the fear, but acknowledging it. Like, yes, in this moment of time, I'm afraid, and feeling the fear, and holding space for fear, if that makes sense, more than anything else. Because I think in the past, what I've done historically is, if there was fear, without even realizing, pushing it away, or invalidating it by saying, oh, there's nothing to be afraid of, you can go through with it, you can do something else, it's I used to think about fear and problem solve it, not feel the fear. And that's when I was in counseling, before I even was diagnosed with CFS. I was talking to counselor about something else that is going on in my life at the time, but after 6 months of counseling, literally in my last session with her, she said to me, you're really good at thinking about your feelings, problem solving them, and putting a plan of action together, but I don't think you're feeling your feelings. I was like, what? I wish you said that to me on day one, not at the end of 6 months. But that was a big switch in realizing and realizing how feelings work, because I see so many people day in and day out now, and my cousins and friends and colleagues, who, when you talk about feelings, people think and immediately, oh, I'm going to do this about feeling. I'm feeling afraid, or I'm feeling a bit bored. Oh, I'm just going to go out or do something, instead of feeling the feeling. And once you've been through that process, you can see where the problem is in other people as well, I guess. So it's yeah, I don't know how I ended up in talking about thinking versus feeling, the feelings, but it was a really important difference in understanding as well. And again, I urge everyone who's watching to observe whether you're thinking about and intellectualizing your feelings, or whether you're feeling your feelings. And I think you might be the one that mentioned this, like feelings usually appear on part of your breathing in your body.
Yeah.
That I think yes, that's very true as well, and they might come up as different sensations in the body, but it's for me, feelings appear physiologically. The way how they manifest is physiologically, and there's no denying about that. I think even in the scientific community, there's lots of evidence if people are worried about that. But yeah, paying attention to feelings is a big part in the recovery.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. And going back to the park benches and going for walks, you said on every park bench, and you wrote me an email, or you wrote it as well in the Facebook community. You were sitting there with your inner children, and you had
Yes.
many of them. What exactly happened there?
Yeah, so that period of time in my recovery was a very special time, actually. Once I started paying attention to my inner world and doing inner work, I started realizing there was there was a lot of emotional wounds. There was a lot of inner trauma that got suppressed throughout the years, and I started connecting to my inner children. And I think I've gone a bit crazy there. I think at one point I had 7 different inner children inside of me at 7 different ages, and there was a lot going on. And I quickly realized, okay, I can't overwhelm myself with a lot of emotions, so I had to pace myself through that. So, but it was quite a revelationary time in my healing. And I think if you're not familiar with inner child work, people might have heard about parts work or shadow work. I think they're pretty much very similar in terms of when you start working with your emotional history and emotional background. If there was a part of you that was wounded when you were, let's say, 4, 5, 6, I don't know, for whatever reasons, whether that was a family situation, whether that was a societal or a school or somewhere else, abuse or big T trauma, small T trauma, for whatever reasons, and you haven't had a safe environment then and there to process it and express it and heal from that, that part of you is still suppressed in your body. And when you start working with healing process and they start to come up, and now when they come up, that is your opportunity to hold that space, to help heal that part of you, that inner child of you, to feel safe and to reintegrate back into the version that you are now. And I think Teal Swan talks quite a lot about doing parts work and how our consciousness and who we are when we're born, and how it splits into hundreds, thousands of different parts as we move through life and as we socialize into daily life, and how we're doing this inner child and parts work is one of the most self-loving things that you can do for yourselves. And I still do parts work or inner child work. I think I've moved on from using the term inner child. I call it more parts work, because I think I feel like some of my inner children have been integrated more, which is quite nice, which is a good progress. Maybe I'm growing up. It's good. But yeah, whenever there is an inner conflict and you want to do something, or you want something and you behave in a different way, that's different parts of you are working differently and want different things. Acknowledging them and giving them a safe space to voice what they have to say and how they're feeling, and working with the different parts at different children, and bringing them to safety, has been another big part of my recovery. And um, I say this to quite a lot of people these days. So I think a lot of us, irrespective of which part of the world you're in, which ethnicity you're born into, which religion, which culture, doesn't matter. I think as the world stands in 2023, and looking back last how many ever hundreds of years, everybody will have some or the other trauma growing up, irrespective of situations. For some people it might be quite severe, for some people it might be different. And Gabor Mate talks quite a lot about how it's not what happens to us. Trauma is what we make mean inside of us, which is quite powerful. And we have all of these different things that are affecting our upbringing and life. And our parents might not have parents or caregivers might not have the knowledge or have had the knowledge to provide a safe environment for us to grow up for whatever reasons. And some do their best, some don't, for whatever reasons. And yes, there is an element of acknowledging that I haven't had the best of the situations growing up, etc., etc. But when you're in a position right now healing through such debilitating illnesses like ME/CFS, or it could be other chronic illnesses, and you start taking ownership of your own healing process and your own journey, and there is an opportunity for you to reparent yourselves from your earlier self. And that's the work that I've done with minor children. So when an unsafe situation came up and one part of me or an inner child of me feels very threatened, very unsafe, very confused, the adult me, as I am right now, with the knowledge that I've acquired in the world right now, if I am given the opportunity to be a parent for this child in this moment, and looking at that part of me as a different entity, how would I respond to that? How can I provide that safe environment? And that process in itself is really powerful in your healing. And what it can do is shift the blame and responsibility from the source of your trauma, source of your abuse, or whatever you've experienced in life, to having that power yourselves, being able to reparent. And I don't just suggest everybody to do it by yourselves. If you need help, talk to people like Daniel and other professionals that have experience in doing this work. But I think inner child work is quite powerful, and being able to reparent yourself is very liberating and very transformational. So.
And did you actively search for them, or did they just come up and you just had to feel?
I've never searched for any of them. I think it's it again. This is I can only connect the dots looking back. So I was diagnosed with ME/CFS July 2021, and I was slightly better in September, October. So for about 3 months I was really ill, and then I was getting slightly better. And then around December time, I just went into a bookshop, and then I saw a coloring book. I don't know, and it was a children's coloring book. I don't know what I was thinking. I think that was my inner child saying, "Oh, I just want to color a book," and I just bought it, and I colored maybe 1 or 2 pages, and then I left it. And when I was really ill again, a few months later, I just wanted to pick that up. There was something inside. When I started paying attention to what's happening in my inner world, there was this urge to just go color this children's coloring book. And the more I started doing that, the more, and then I was meditating, and then I was journaling. So the more I was doing what I wanted to do, and being in the present, there were all these memories that were suppressed and all these inner children that came up. Yeah, one just wanted to just do a coloring book. That's all one part of me wanted to do, and one part of me just wanted to just talk about emotions and really say out what she wanted to say. And yeah, there were lots of different characteristics to different parts of me, and yeah, they just naturally came up. I think the best thing I could have done and that I did was just create a safe space and open that space. And I actually remember one of the big things that helped me during that time is your emotional healing meditation. I think it's in your 8th module, unless you've changed modules now. It's still in 8th.
It's still an 8, yes.
Yeah. I think that was really helpful. I think before even coming across the meditation, through all this work, I just came to this point of, this is my opportunity to reparent myself, and this is my opportunity to provide that safe space. And then I remembered putting your meditation on and sitting there, and when you said something along the similar lines, I was just sobbing. I was like, I'm in the right place, I'm doing the right work. Because I think sometimes when you're going through lots of difficult things like this, that validation and reassurance can go a long way. So thank you for that.
Thank you. You're welcome. So now everybody's thinking like, okay, I'm doing the emotional work, you're doing the emotional work, but how did that make you feel better?
Well, that's a good question. I think I wasn't even when I was really doing the work, it was not because, oh yeah, I want to get better and I just don't want to be here in this place. No, there was a point where I was really down and I was so close to giving up on life. And I don't say this lightly, because I know how many people suffer, how deeply in the ME/CFS community, and it's such a serious illness. And I know of people that have actually lost their lives to this. So during my really tough times, I was one of those people. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm ready to just go, just give up this life. And there was something in my head. I was like, okay, if I'm ready to go, then maybe I'll start living one moment at a time and see how long I can put up with this. And just by being in not alone, but being in that present moment, and that switch in thinking and switch in approach and attitude towards how I looked at life. And before that, my life was like, I have to achieve this, I have to earn this much, I have to have like this house or have this kind of lifestyle. Like you can say the list is so long. But after that moment, I was like, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to be anyone to anyone. I don't have to achieve anything. All I am doing is living this moment. And then if I'm lucky enough, I'll live the next moment and maybe the next. And I still, most of the time, still live by the same principle. Like sometimes I only look at next 20 minutes. If I survive that, then think about next step, maybe an hour at a time. So I used to make like 3-5 year plans before. Now I hardly make plans for next week. So it's that's the shift. And how I got better, I think once you start following the law of nature, which is live in the present moment and be in the present moment, life takes care of itself. And I started seeing improvement in symptoms, because you're not too much focusing on symptoms. Oh, I have this pain, I have this exhaustion. I'm like, I'm here. There's sunshine. Okay. There's pain. Okay. There's rain, or there's something nice going on. Okay. And you just constantly appreciating what you have in that moment. And yeah, and it started getting better. And it's not all rosy picture. There were times where I'd slip back because maybe something else came up and I needed to release. And there are still times, very very few these days, but where I was like, okay, I know something is going on, and I just need to regroup and come back to myself. But yeah, I think all the things that we talked about, realizing the coping mechanisms and doing the inner child work and thinking versus feeling, and living authentically. When you keep doing that, and it's like practice every day. It's like how you need to practice your like if you want to have physical health and the muscle health, you need to do daily practice of exercise, whatever that might be, whatever that suits you. It's similar for your overall well-being, holistic health, that most mainstream misses, only looks at one part of health. So if you want to look at your holistic health, then you have to, I think, regularly look at how are your coping behaviors showing up in your daily life, or how are you being present with your feelings, and how is your authenticity? Are there any old patterns coming up? So I guess by doing them as regularly as possible, my symptoms have mostly gone away, touch wood. And yeah. But yeah, things got better.
That's great. So how do you live right now? How does your life look like?
There's no agenda or a big plan. There's no pressure if I have to achieve this or that. There's more awareness of how I'm feeling, and like really feeling, because I'm in touch with what's going on. I am living more meaningfully, and every day feels like, wow, this was not where I was day before or the day before. See, even though it's only been just short of a year since we met, that feels like a lifetime ago. It's how I was there to where I am now. I'm able to work. I just started work earlier this week, actually, and I've been traveling for most part of the past 10 months. And when I was really poorly, I couldn't drive for more than 5 minutes, and there were times where I just couldn't even drive or get out of the house. And recently I drove all the way from Rostock in Germany all the way to Sheffield in England, which is like literally on the road behind the wheel for 2 days, and that wasn't a problem. And whereas if you looked at how I was a few months ago, that would be totally unthinkable. And I know that would be unthinkable to some of you that may be watching, but I think when people say, oh, time heals things, time is only a factor. Time can help you heal things, but it's just having time alone doesn't heal. Just having time, it's not like, oh yeah, give it a year, you'll get better. Now you have to actively take ownership of your healing process. So I'm glad I did that. So yeah, life feels much better, and I'm glad to say I've realized how precious life is, and how wonderful to be a human in this universe, and to have the opportunity. So I enjoy it as much as I can, and I live as authentically as I can. And yeah, and looking forward to what the rest of my life brings, however long or short that might be.
Yeah,
that might maybe.
That's all anyone ever dreams of anyway. So it's great. It's amazing.
Thank you, and thank you, massive thank you, because I came across you and your program at a time where, yeah, I was really confused, and I was like, where am I going wrong? What am I doing wrong? There must be something that I could do to help myself. And whatever I was looking at, there were different programs and different things that I was looking at. They just didn't click with me, didn't work with me. And coming across your story on Raylan's YouTube channel, and when you talked about emotional stress and how that was normalized for you, and then eventually looking at your program, I was like, wow, that's exactly what's going on in my life. That's what I needed to do. That's why some of the other things didn't fully sit with me. Yes, they would help, but they weren't getting to the root cause of many things. So yeah, I am really grateful that I managed to come across you, and we had a chance to chat. And yeah, I think that was the right thing at the right time that could have happened. So it was a blessing. So thank you.
Thank you, Lahari. Thank you. Hey, do you've got any tips, things that we haven't spoken about that would be helpful for anyone else?
Yes, one. I mean, of the things that we have spoken about, there's quite a lot there. But one thing that I would say is chill. Just don't take healing very seriously. And I come across so many wonderful people that are so weighed down by the emotional work they have to do. There's so much to do. There's this to do. There's that to do. Take it lightly. Do one thing at a time. Be in that moment, and as much as possible, enjoy. To be joyful, and I think that can fuel your energy to do the work that helps you eventually heal. But yeah, don't forget to be joyful. Life is meant to be joyful.
Yeah.
Also with the recognition that there is suffering too. But yeah, just enjoy and be in the moment.
Yeah. Yes, I think that's important. And we talked about in our first session already about joy,
Yeah.
because everybody takes it overly serious and then they want to do 10 hours a day of emotional work. And like, oh,
No, if you're coming at it from the same pressure of I have to do this to get better, I have to achieve this, then you're perpetuating the wrong behavior again. Just be and enjoy. Yeah, have that playfulness that a child has. So
yeah, I think this is wonderful. And you're still part of the Facebook group. So
yes, I am. I must apologize to all our community because I'm not very active there because my real life has taken off quite actively. So, yes, I'm still there. If people want to talk to me, you can reach out. I look through my messages and I respond occasionally when I have the time. So, yeah, feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear from people and offer any thoughts of comfort or safety where I can. So,
yeah, great. Thank you. And yes,
thank you.
for everyone watching in Facebook groups for advice, most people that are healed are not in anymore.
I'm just about still there.
Yeah, I have to ask sometimes people to come back to the Facebook group because please, can you help me a little bit there?
Yeah, yeah, I'll see what I can do there. But yeah, but I am there. I'm still there. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. And thanks a lot for your story, Lahari. I think it's a beautiful story, and I think a lot of people can learn from it, and it's inspirational. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share it.
Great. Then, goodbye.